So today we'll build on what we've been doing for the past few weeks. Basically, we've been trying to look at array methods. We started with looking at array, the data type, then we had to look into each of the methods in array. We've looked at some common methods. I know we've looked at these ones up to filter, gone up to filter. So today we'll be looking at these methods here. Now, before I continue, I would like to say there are so many methods when it comes to array. What do you mean methods? I mean methods are functions, piece of code that are built into a particular data types that make programmers work easy, such that as we saw in the push, that when you want to add element to an array, this is what you need to do. Just call push, add an element to the array. So you don't need to manually start working on this, but configuring it manually, maybe selecting the position and positioning element stuff. So those are methods that are already built in codes, piece of code packaged that once you find the data type, you can call the methods. So we are looking at methods that you use for array data types. Now, these methods, a method can work for methods are specific to certain data types. Not all data types, of course, we use these methods. You understand? So that was what we started with, and we looked at a few of them. So we're going to be starting with we're going to be looking at these ones after filter. We're going to be looking at splice, slice, join, split, includes, for each, and flat. These are not all the methods in array. As you progress in this field, you discover more methods, you discover more things that you can do with array. These are not all the methods. I have to point that out. There are so many of them. Now, another thing I would also like to point out is there are methods that most methods apply to array are also applicable to strings. Most methods you apply to arrays are also applicable to strings because strings are iterables. When they mean iterables, means things that can iterate, that you can run a code over to repeat it, to pick each of the elements and implement either a or something on each of its elements. So strings also behave like arrays. So most of the methods that are related to strings also work related to arrays also work with strings. That's for that. Then last week we were looking at sorts, and there was a challenge we encountered. So I'll try and clarify that today before we continue. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. I just want to we looked at sorts last week, and things were not adding up that we saw. So because some of these things you use them after some time, give them and start doing something else. But as you use, you understand them better. You see how they work. And so okay, let me just declare new. Okay. Let me start with the sort method. Now, what does sort do? As the name implies, it sorts your array in an orderly manner. The default pattern is sorting it in an ascending manner, such that you can sort your array. When given an array that is scattered, so what sort will do is to help you sort it out in a kind of ascending manner. So I have this array, and it uses an attribute. When I say ascending manner, it means that one comes before one. If it's for strings, it means it will use the alphabetical order to sort them out. A comes before B, B comes before C. For numbers, it sorts them out accordingly: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the case may be. If I go ahead and specify an array here and say this array of numbers 3, 4, 5, 0, and 3. Now, if I run an array on sort on this, and an array dot sort on this, so let me just call this the sorted array, and say it's equal to array of numbers dot sort results. So if I run this, it's supposed to have
Hello.
Can you all hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay. Okay, so please just give me a second. All right, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
with you, sir.
Sorry for that. Okay, so if I go ahead and console log this array, if I go ahead and console log this array on line 374, on line 374, yeah. Okay, so you can see on line 374 that the array is sorted. We have 0, we have 3, we have 4, we have 5. So that is what array does sort does. Then if I have alphabets that I want to sort, let me say array of alphabets. Array of alphabets. Okay. And say maybe A, C, D. So if I sort out this, I say array of alphabets, and I sort it out. So in this case, my sorted, run this script, A, D, K, and M. That becomes my sorted. All right, so this is how sort works. Then in an instance where, for instance, we have, that was what happened last time. We have 1, 4 here, 14 here, and I want to run sort this one. I want to run this one. See, numbers. Yeah, so you see what happens here. For this one, I have 0, 14, 3, and 5, which is not obviously not sorted. The reason is when it comes to sorting array, numbers are also treated like strings. When it comes to sorting arrays, numbers are also treated like strings. So, and if you check the order, ascending order, 1 comes before 4. So it will sort it out using the first element or using the first letter in that group. Like in this case, after getting 0, the next one it's 1. And since we know that after 0 we have 1, we pick 1 first, then 3 and 5. So this is how sorting works. So this is how sorting works. So it goes 0, 1, 3, and 5. That was the division. Now, if you want to sort variables that are obviously greater than 10, you have to now pass in that passing called compare function. But I would like us to, but that might be something that we'll have to treat on another time because it's a little bit more complicated than just the normal sort. So that was what I wanted to correct with the sort that we did last week. If you want to sort numbers after the value of 9, you have to, because if you want to sort 25 and 14, or let's say 34 and 34 and 34 and that's the best 34 and all right, okay, like 100, you have a number 100 and you have 98. You to first pick 100 before 98 because of 1, because you have 100. So that is how sorting practically works out in arrays. All right, so having said that, I would like to continue with other methods. Once I actually had in mind treating today. Okay, so the first of it is the splice method. The splice method. Now, the splice method, what the splice method does is the splice method is it's something that's applied with arrays. Now I group them into 3 things that it performs. The splice method can be used to delete element from an array. That's number 1. Number 2, it can be used to insert elements in an array. You know, when we did for push and pop, we said that the push and pop method adds to the end, the push adds to the end of an array, while the pop removes from the end and also on shift. But now, what the slide method helps us do is add, it deletes or add in particular positions, So that can be achieved with the splice. You know, I told you before now that apart from push and that adds to the end of that are pretty straightforward, the splice method has its own way of helping us add to certain places of the array. But there's a caveat. Now, most of the times why the splice method is not used often is because the splice method changes the original array. I will demonstrate it as you see, as you go along, you understand it. It changes the original array. And one of the rules when it comes to programming is that you don't change the word, we use the word mutates, it means change. You don't change the original array. The reason being that you might declare an array that you're using in the whole of your program, and you now implement sort method somewhere in your application. You know, at some point, you now want to refer back to the array you declared before. Unknown to you, splice that was applied and the array has changed, and you might be getting a result that is not what you expected to get. Unless you're sure that you want to remove something and add something, that is when, unless you're sure of what you're doing, that is when you apply the splice method. All right, so let's continue. On line 312. Okay, so I'm deleting an element. Now, what this method, it takes in arguments. Now, in this case, it's taking in 2 arguments. The first argument is the position you want it to remove. The position you want it to remove. The position you want it to start removing from. While the second argument is the number of items it is to remove from that position. Remember that these are indexes. We use indexes to identify position of an array. So it means that if I have 4 elements here, 1, 2, 3, 4, I have position 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I'm splicing from position 0, it means I'm removing 2 elements from that array. So I'm removing London and Abuja from this array. So it means I'm removing 2 elements from this array, London and Abuja from this array. So if I go ahead and console log this, so I'll get, if somebody should mute, it's echoing. Check. So if I go ahead and console log this, now what I'm doing here, I'm console logging it after the splice has been applied and before and the original array itself. So I'm doing it the 2 after and the original array itself. So on line 314 and line 315, let's see what we have there. Okay, so this is line 315. On line 315, I've removed two elements from the array. I've removed 2 elements from the array, London and sorry, let me see. Okay. Yeah. Now, these are the elements I removed from the array. You can see that the original array has been changed. Initially, this was what I had. Before I applied slice, if I comment out this, okay, no, not there. If I comment out this slice method, I'll comment this out. So I have this original array of cities. I have London, Abuja, Lagos, and this. So if I apply slice, it means I'm removing Lagos and Abuja. I'm removing Lagos and Abuja. So my original array will now be just, sorry, I'm moving London and Abuja. My original array will now be just Lagos and Port Harcourt, which is what I have here. So this is the original array. Now see what happens once I apply splice. So if I attempt to call my original array, which is array of cities, which is what I declared there, it will no longer be this. It will rather be what happens after the splice method. So this is now my original array because it has removed those two from there. Yeah, I didn't console the first one. After deleting splice, deleted. This one is deleted and this one is original. Okay, so I removed London and Abuja, and I have Lagos. So my original array is now Lagos and Port Harcourt containing just two elements because I've removed two elements. So that is how the splice method works for removing items from an array. The first argument you declare here is the position you want to start removing, and the second argument is the amount of items that you are removing. So in this case, I'm removing two items beginning from position 0. So this is what I have. All right, is that clear?
Yes.
All right. Okay, so the number 2, insert elements into an array. How can I use the splice to insert elements into an array? Meanwhile, I have to comment this out. So in this case now, inserting elements into an array, the difference is that you still declare where you want the splice to start. But in this case, instead of applying the number of items you want to be removed, you just apply 0. Instead of applying the number of items you want to remove, you just apply 0. 0, don't remove any item from the array. Then the item you want to insert, you now outline there. It can be as many, even if you remove just one item and you want to populate it with 3, 4 items, it's fine. It works. But what happens is it will add it to the position where you removed. It will add it to position 1. So at position 1 here, this is my position 0, London. So at position 1, instead of having Abuja, I will now have Tokyo. Position 2, I'll have Toronto, then Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. So this is how we can use it to insert elements at certain positions in an array. So if I go ahead and console log it, you see that just as we had before, the original array has changed. So I now have London, Tokyo, Toronto, Abuja, and Lagos and Port Harcourt. So as I said, so imagine you finish doing this and in your code, you want to now go back and use the original array that you had before. As you can see, it will not work. You might not have the expected result because somewhere along the line, you call the splice method, which has changed the original array. So that is how it works in this case. All right, so the next one is replacing an item in an array, replacing an element in an array. So in replacing, okay, go ahead.
Okay, this slide that you just explained now.
Okay.
If you put another array inside, like another you put another array inside. Now you want to use the first one again. How do you get it?
You put another array inside this array?
Yes.
Why would you put an array inside this first one? You can't use it again. I said, like, once splice, you've already changed this array. It's no longer the original array. You can't use that array again.
Okay, you can't get the original one again.
You can't. Splice changes. Okay. That's why I use the word mutate. Splice mutates your original array. So once you've applied splice, it means that your original array has been changed automatically to what you now have after the splice.
Okay. Okay.
Just give me a sec.
The lesson katwa kwa tina ronkure. Nko onkure kwa tina lesson lo.
Okay, so sorry for that. Okay, so we are starting at 0, 1, and 0. Okay, so the next one now is how to replace elements in an array. Replacing an element in an array. So that case, we'll now do this next one, which is the third thing that splice does for us, replacing an element in an array. So let's go ahead and see what happens. In this case, we can replace an element in an array. So as the syntax goes, first of all, the first argument is the position you want to start the replacement from. And the second argument is the number of items you want to replace. Like this is our original array, this position 0, this position 1. So we are starting here and we are replacing just one element. So which means we are replacing Abuja with whatever we have here. So even if you have more than one element, you can remove one element and replace it with two. You can remove just like that. You can remove two elements and replace with one. It doesn't really matter. So if we go ahead and console log, this is our original array now. Instead of having London, Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt, it should rather have London, Kathmandu, Manila, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. So let's go ahead and see that in action. Sorry, you might hear some background noise. There are some things happening around here. So okay, so this is what we see. We have London, Kathmandu, Manila, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. All right. So that is it.
Yes, sir. But I think I have a question.
Okay, go ahead.
Please go back to the code.
Okay.
All right. The question is this, like your console login original array of cities.
Yes.
Why do you have to write both of them inside?
I just wrote it so that we'll know what your console login. I see the original array, see the word here. This is a string. I can remove it. I just wrote it.
Okay, is the name. Okay.
I just wanted us to know that.
Yeah, then also on line. Okay, line 314.
Line 304.
You are console logging 314.
Okay, I will console login.
You console log after deleting with splice array. So that's just the caption you want us to see, right? Then the main thing
this product and this.
All right.
Okay, so having said that, we'll look at another array method which is called slice. It is called slice. This is this array method. Okay, now slice does its own work like this. Unlike the splice mutates. Please mark that word mutate. It means change. Mutates the original array. Slice does not mutate the original array. So those are the differences between slice and splice. It does not change the original array. The original array remains constant. So if I go ahead and look at now, I applied slice on this. It can take one argument, it can take two. But now this first argument is the position where you want your slice to start. Why this argument is where you want your slice to end, but before it gets to that point, which means it's not collecting. Okay, I have how many elements do I have? Yeah, I have. Let me console log this. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. So if I go ahead and console log this, so I have 3, 3, 3. So you see, my slice array and the original array should be the same. And 3, 3, 3, and like 4, 4, 4. Sorry. What I'm trying to explain that it removes the part you want it to remove and forms another array with it, but it does not change your original array. So if in case I want to do something in my code, I can be working with this my slice array. I can be working with this my sliced array. So what it will do is it will remove the elements of this. It will remove what I want it to remove, form another array with it that I can work with. And it will not distort my original array. This is my original array. So even if I want to call my original array somewhere in the code, I can still call it somewhere in the code. So as in this case, we remove Abuja and Lagos. So it means it is the array it is starting from is the array of index 1, and it's ending before. Note this last argument is it's not in this last argument is always not included. It's before that argument. So it's taking this and forsaking this, and leaving out the Port Harcourt. So I will and it now forms a new array called sliced array, and the original array remain constant. So that is how the slice works. The slice does not mutate the main array. Okay, so the next one we'll be looking at is the join method. Now the join method, okay, so how best do I explain this? What the join method practically does is to convert an array to a string. I have a set of arrays. Join method will just convert it to a string. After converting it to a string, it will now my join, okay, my join array on line 343. I have my join array. So it will convert my array to a string. If I don't put anything inside here, the default will be it will separate them by comma. And whatever I put inside here with what it will use is between the quotation marks is what it will use to join them together. In this case now, if I go ahead and lock it, so you can see it's converting to a string and joining it with comma in all cases. If I change this to maybe and or something, you apply the same thing, joining all of them with and. Joining them all with and. If I remove this and just put an empty space, I remove this and an empty space. So if you just join, there's an empty space between each of them without the comma. So that is what join practically does. It collects your array and converts it to a string and leaves it in case you want to do something, any other thing with it. But in collaboration with join, another one I would like us to look at is splits. Why join converts from array to string? Split does the opposite. Split will carry a string and convert it to an array. Split will carry a string. So see what happened. After joining this array together, we now want to go ahead and split it. On line 340, the same array I joined that I've converted to a string. And I want to go ahead and split that same array. So if I split the array together, and I will have this splitted array here. If I split it together, I will have this. Now it has converted it back to the way it was before. So in this case, I joined it. Now here I'm splitting it. So what join practically does for you is if you have a string and you want, like you have a word, say this, say this is Lagos. If you apply join on them, it will create an array with the words using the first one this, second one is, and Lagos, and with that it will form an array of words for you with your string or your sentence that you've written down. So that is how join and split works. Before I move on, there is an application to these splits that is quite interesting, that might be interesting to you. You know, when you log into a website, okay, sorry, before I go further and say that, now the split also takes in arguments. Apart from the first argument it takes in, it can take in a second argument. Now, what the second argument will do is, after splitting these words and using them to form an array, I want to only return 2 of the words, not all of them. I want to only return 2 of the words, not all of them. So in this case, I'm returning everything, but in this case, I want to return 2 of the words. So if I console log it below, that is line 343. I'm only collecting 2 of the words. Go down here, you see that I'm only collecting London and Abuja. I'm not collecting the rest, the other words that have been discarded. In this option where I passed in the second argument, this time around a number. Okay, having said that, this is particularly used. Sometimes, when you log into a website and after putting your email address, it opens a dashboard and you see your name say, welcome, John. That is what Split can do that work for you. Split can do that work for you. Let's give an example. Let's say a user enters an input, an email input, email equal to, definitely is a string, so it will be a string, enters an email, and let's say John, or email.com. Now see, now I just need only Paul from this string. So what I can do here, if I go ahead and apply my split, remember that is a string, and for that to work, I have to now convert it into an array. So if I go ahead and apply my split here, the string, so I go ahead and apply my split here and apply it to this email. Okay, and I now say I need only the first letter. I need only the first letter. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay, yeah. And now remember that if I say I need only the first letter, it's going to give me Paul. Okay, so now I want us to take it step by step so that we'll see the result of these things. Let me split that string first. Let me split it first. Then if I go ahead and console log, I'll just comment out these ones. Sometimes it's good you take it like that so we all get it. So I have my splitted string. My splitted. Or splitted, so it's obvious. Splitted. Okay. Okay, so that is line 3, 4, 5. Let's now see what we have on line 3 first. Okay, it's not. Oh, okay, sorry. I'm editing something else. I'm calling something else. Okay, so on line 3, 4, 5. Okay, yeah, this is what I was looking for. I think it's yeah, this is what I was looking for. Since there are no spaces between each of them, so if I define a space, I'm telling it to split it using a space. So to look for a space, and use the space as a boundary to split them. But if I remove the space, it means that there are no spaces in between those lines. So it will just split the individual lines. So that was what we're having that. So what I wanted to show was, you see how I splitted those words? Each of the letter now forms an element of this array. each of these letters now forms an element of this array. So if that happens, which means they are all indexed. This is 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So if I don't want to show all, I want to show a few. So it's easier for me to grab wherever I want to show from. Like I go here now, I say, this is what I have done before. And I now say, okay, I want to grab, I want to grab, I want to grab the first two, for example. So this is what it will return. It will return just the first two. Now, if I want to grab something at, if I want to grab, I want to grab the words before the arts. So I can do index of arts. If I do index of arts, I will get the particular position that the art is occupying, and I'll be able to grab any word. Yeah. So let's go ahead and see. Just play along. Let's see where we get from here. So if I do index of, we've done index of before, so I believe we know what index of is. Here, the index of arts. This returns a number. This index of arts returns a number. That's a number. Okay. If I go ahead and say split the string, I'm supposed to get index of, okay. Valid experience. Just hold on. Okay. So it's giving me, since I've gotten the index of arts. So I'm saying that, okay, pick the index of art definitely will be the number of will be equal to the number of elements before arts. I hope I've not confused us. Since we are numbering it from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the index of arts will definitely be the size of the elements before arts. And the size of the elements are 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Remember that the quantity and the index starts from 0, while the quantity starts from 1. We start counting from 1, of course, to know the number of elements in an array. But the index starts from 0. So if you do this, I'm able to get Paul, only Paul. So I can now use this splitted array, this figure, to display on my other user interface and say, welcome, Paul. Of course, using join to remove it from an array, remove it from here, and displaying it. So I just wanted to make us understand how we apply these methods. So having got this splitted array, if I go, I can still go further and say, okay, since it's now an array, I want to convert it into a string. Remember the method, I can now apply join to it. I now apply join, and if I say splitted array, so I don't confuse us. So let me just do it here and say, okay, after doing that, I now want to grab the Paul const name. Yeah, const name will now be equal to splitted string dot join. String dot join, and string dot join. I go ahead and say console log name. Instead of doing this now, I now want to console log the name. Let me still leave this and also continue. I just have to do this so that we see how we apply these things, and let's see if I can drop the name. Okay, so on line 348, that's where we get I now have, oh, okay, I joined you to the comma, sorry, then I remove this line. On line 348, and I have Paul. So I can now use this Paul and display my user interface and say, welcome, Paul. So you see how you can use this array methods to actually manipulate strings, manipulate arrays, just to get what we want to get and use. And note that the split does not in any way, the slice does not in any way affect our original array. We've already mentioned that it does not affect the split, does not in any way affect our original array. So our original array remains intact, but we've been able to grab John and use it for what we want to use it for. Is that clear? Hello, is that clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So the next one I want, the next one I
Sir,
will
please, I have. Can you hear me, sir?
go ahead and ask the question.
Okay. Now, if you want to get from like that pole now, you want to get from U. You want to get U and L from the pole.
Want to get
How do you put the number?
You want to get U and L from Paul.
Yes.
For person. So you have to change what you pass here. Where is Paul again? So we want to get only U and L from Paul.
Yes.
Okay, let's see. We split with this. I will tell you to grab. Okay, what I will do after implementing this, after splitting like this, I will still go ahead and split again. Now I have Paul on its own. I can now go ahead and split Paul again, repeat the same process. But this time around, I now have 4 variables in the array. Instead of calling join now, remember that after my splitting, my splitted array becomes this. My splitted array now becomes this, and I have Paul. Now I have Paul, and I now have A. And U and L. It is what I now have Paul. So after this process, this is what I now have. So if I want to get these 2 from here, I'll go ahead and run the same process again, the same split I did, this process that took me to this point. If I run it again, this time around, I'm now telling it to return only 2 variables. So this time around, it will return, I can discard this and it will return this. Do you understand?
Yes.
I can discard it to return this. But note something, the split starts, the return value of the split starts from a particular position. If you get into a particular position, like in this case, it's starting from, it's telling me to return 2 from the beginning. Now, if I want to get from the middle, this is an array, and I want to get something from the middle. Remember, we talked of splice. So I can now go ahead and apply splice on this. If I apply splice on this, I can remove these 2 using splice and get these 2. Because this is now an array. And you remember, when we want to get elements in an array from the end or the beginning, we know what to do. We can do pop. But when we want to get it any other place that is not the end or the beginning, like in this case, you want 2 elements. That is where your splice comes in. So we can apply splice here at the same time. Keep on applying the methods until you get what you want. So that is how I will do it. So you probably see another shorter way of achieving it, because your splice will naturally start from the beginning and get number of elements, so it will naturally start from P. But your splice can penetrate inside your array elements and get from whichever position you want it to get from.
Okay, I understand.
Right. So,
Thank you.
okay. So let's now look at another method that's also nice looking at. We have the includes method. We have this includes method. Now, this includes method returns a boolean, true or false. What it does is you're telling include method to check if a certain element exists in an array. And if it exists, it will return true. If it doesn't exist, it will return false. For instance, here now, I want to check if I have an array of cities somewhere up there that has different, okay, that's this array of, that's our normal array of cities we've been working with. So if okay, this is my array of cities. Now, because Sheffield is not here, if I go ahead and run this, I'm supposed to get false. So it will return false for me. So if I go to line 361, to return false. Or if I include something which is in the array, it will return true. If I change it to London, since I have London in the array, it will return true. So that is where that comes. That is how that works. All right. So having said that, the next one I want us to look at is the for each. The for each method. What the for each does is, you know, the way you still have your for loop that you iterate over elements of an array and run a function on each of the elements of the array. It's the same thing the for each method does. The for each method does similar thing with what your for loop does. But instead of going ahead to write loop, for each method looks like a shortcut to achieve this. And it takes a callback function. Remember callback functions. This is its callback function. But in this my case, all I'm telling my for each method to do is I'm running the for each on array of cities for each. Now this for each accepts a callback function. This for each accepts a callback function. Okay, let me go ahead and remove. Okay. Now this is my for each method. This is my for each method. Sorry. This is my for each method. Now, this is how it works. But just like we have map, you know, map method that we talked about, we said map takes in a callback function. But each method also behaves in a similar way. It takes in a callback function and takes each of the elements of the array and run it through the callback function. Take each of the elements of the array and run it through. So what you would, first of all, it will take this first element, London, and now implement the callback function on London. Take Abuja, implement on Abuja. Take Lagos and implement on Lagos. So for now, this is the syntax. If I now include a callback function, this time around, I've used an arrow function for my callback. You can use the word function. Remember, this is where my callback function ends. This whole thing I wrote down here, I can as well cut it out and write it as a separate function. I can as well cut it out and write it as a separate function. Give it a name, say, okay, const callback, callback. Okay, now this is the function. And if I go ahead and call it here, I now say callback. So this is what happens for each method takes a callback function. All it will do is it will take each of those elements, run it through this callback function. What I'm asking it to do here for me is I'm saying that each element, now this word element can be anything. It can be item, it can be anything. But in some cases, I like to use city. I like to use what I'm iterating over. So what it's doing basically is it's collecting each of the city and changing the name of the city to uppercase. Then here it will saving it in a variable called cities in caps, then returning it here. So it's collecting this call. So this callback function from line 365 to line 368, it's what is inside there. So for each, we take each of this element, each item in this array, and run a callback function to it. And the callback function now applies changes to each of those elements. So if we take a look at what we have here on line 370, Let me go to line 370. Let's see. So you can see I have London, Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt, returning each of those individual variables. London, Abuja, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. Because I just applied the call. So this callback function, you can try write it here. And you know, I have to, we've discussed about arrow function. In case for some of you might be wondering why this doesn't look like the function I know. Either you use the function keyword or you use an arrow function. If you want to change this to, if you want to change it to the regular function, you can just write the function keyword and say, okay, sorry, name remains there. Then you say, now use the keyword function. Use the keyword function. And move the arrow. Of course, you move the arrow because the arrow makes it an arrow function. So this still works. If I go ahead and move this, so this still works. So that both the same thing, but in the first case, I use an arrow function. In the other case, I use a regular function. So this is what it will take each of those items in the array and run it through the callback function to implement the changes that you require it to implement. Now, having said that, for each method, it's there is a caveat for each method. For each method returns an undefined. It always returns undefined. Please take note of that, because you might be asking, when do I use for each? When do I use map? When do I use normal for loop? When okay, we of course will not talk of method chaining. Just know that for each method returns undefined. Let me explain that. If I comment at line 375, see what I did there. I'm saving this for each method inside a variable called for each with array. Now, if I try to console log for each with array, instead of getting this, getting this replies, this console log, let me comment out this. Instead of getting this, no, it can't work. Now, instead of getting this, I would rather get undefined here. I would rather get an undefined here. Why? Because for each method returns undefined. But in this case, it will work. I will get the caps just as we ran it before. But if I try to get the variable, let's say I want to get the variable and use it somewhere. You know, but when we store a variable, we intend probably to reuse it in our code. It will return undefined. To return undefined, you can see result of for each method undefined. If I remove this phrase here, so that it doesn't confuse us. So it's now returning undefined. It's returning undefined. So which means I cannot use this undefined to do any other thing in any other place of my app. So that is what for each method returns. Unlike the map method, if I was using a map, remember that if I was using a map, if I change this to a map method and say, okay, I change this to map, I don't get undefined here. I change it to map add, okay, sorry. Also look, I didn't return anything. I return, maybe here now, I now return key. Now return this. So if I change this to map, see what happens. I will now get the result in an array. I will get the result in an array. But if I do that with for each, if I even use for each here to throw an error because of this return, it will return, sorry, it will give me undefined. If I go back to for each and use for each here, it will give me undefined. But what for each returns is undefined. So you see, it's returning undefined. So please notice that the difference between, because it's a very good interview question, they actually a lot in interviews. The difference between for each and map, because they seem to do the same thing. But for map, returns the expected result in a new array, while for each returns undefined. The only time that for each works is if you're not returning anything. Returning means that you're collecting something something from that thing and using somewhere else. Like it's throwing back a value to you. So what for it throws back, it's undefined. While a map will throw back the logic that was implemented on those elements in an array. So that is different between for each and map method. Let me go back to how it was before. Why it was not giving us error here before was not because I wasn't returning anything. I was just console logging something to the console. You know, when I console log means I'm not using it any other place. Just console logging it. So that was why initially it wasn't giving me any error. But immediately I put return, asking it to give me back something that I want to use somewhere. Because for return, it is assuming that I need a value that I will use to implement the logic somewhere. It will give me undefined. So I can go ahead and delete this because it will definitely show an undefined since for it doesn't return anything. So that is why in most cases, we don't even bother saving the for each method in a variable. We don't bother saving it in a variable because you know it will not return, it will return undefined. So what's the point saving it in a variable? So that is what for each method does and how it works. Any questions on that? Hello, are we still following?
Yeah, no
I'm with you,
question
sir.
from me.
Okay, so now last but not the least, we'll now look at flats and we'll call it a day, except we have questions that we need to tackle because I want us to digest these things. When we finish this, we're almost done with some of the most JavaScript, most array methods. I will now move on to object methods and from there. So because I want us to look at the data types and look at the methods that are applicable to most of those data types, especially for arrays and objects. If we look at them, then we can go into DOM manipulation and start building on that. So the last but not the least is the flat method. As the name implies, it's called flat. What does flat means? Flat means it brings everything to the barest, to the lowest level, to the minimal, to the least minimal level or something like that. So imagine I have an array. It is mostly used to flatten or to reduce nested arrays. When I mean reduce, not like we reduced before, like to remove nesting from the arrays. If you check this array, I have a nested array here. I have the array of 1, 2, 5, and I still have an array inside an array. This one is now 0, air. Hello? Yeah, let me call. Sorry for that. Okay, so I now have an array. Now I have an array nested inside array. So 1, 2, 5 is holding this array, and inside this array, we still have another array inside. So in order to remove this square brackets, remove them and flatten the array, we use the flat method. So if I go ahead and flatten this array, this is what I get. This is what I will explain the parameters that are being passed into this place. Now, if I remove this and change it to, if I don't put anything, it will flatten it to a depth of 1. A depth of 1 meaning that it will go into this array and remove this other one, because these are 3 depths. We have an array inside a smaller array. So it will just go 1 depth below. So it will remove this first one, and what you have is 1, 2, 5, 0, then this array. Because the instruction was that it should just flatten it to a depth of 1. So if I console log that, this is what I will get. So that is line 382 on line 382. So I get 1, 2, 5, 0, then I have an array also. This means an array of containing 2 elements. So look at it here. I have this array 8 and house. If I go ahead and now say, okay, flatten it to, if I put 1 and if I don't put anything, like the same thing, flatten it to 1 depth. If I say 2, let's say I know the number of enclosures in my array, number of the depth level of my array, and I say 2, it will remove everything and flatten it all together. But if I don't know the depth of my array, there are cases you're working on the array you're expecting, you don't know the depth, but you want it to be flattened. All you just need to do is to put infinity. Once you put infinity, it will just flatten it. Even if you have it 100, you have the depth is up to 100, it will flatten everything for you because you said infinity. So this is what we have here. Another thing it also does for you is this flat also helps to remove empty spaces in an array. Like here, I have this and I now have an empty, nothing filling this. When you flatten it, to remove it and just give you the elements that are visible in the array. So that is what flat does. So today we've looked at flats, we've looked at for each, we've looked at includes, we've looked at split, we've looked at splice, we've looked at slice. Their names sound very interesting. So I want us to please go ahead and look at them within the week, do more research, get to know them more, because you'll be using them a lot. Right. So any questions before we round off the
I don't really get the difference between when you put 1 or 2 in the flattening method.
Okay, I said if you don't pass it an argument, if it flattens it to a depth of 1. When I mean depth, I mean if you look at this array on line 375, I have a bigger array enclosing another small array. That small array is enclosing another small array. Like I have an array in an array in an array, 3 depths. So if I don't put anything in the pass an argument in the flat, it will flatten it to a depth of 1, which means it will tend to reduce the small array inside the bigger array, just 1 level inside the bigger array. It will remove 1 level, it will just go 1 level below inside the bigger array. So which gives us this. We have 1, 2, 5, 0, then an array. This means that this is an array of 2 elements. These are the 1, 2, 5, 0, then 8 and house. So I'll have everything here, removing this, then I'll now have an array that has 8 and house. Flatten it to 1 depth. Now, if I include 1, it's the same thing. If you don't include an argument, by default, it is 1. So if you include an argument, 1 is the same thing. But if I want to flatten it to a depth of 2, which means that I want to remove it, go into the main array, remove any other array, remove any other array. So twice. Like in this my case, I have 2 nested arrays. I have this one here, I have this, you can see it by this, and this. So it's going here, removing this first one and removing the second one in this, since I've set a depth of 2. And if I go ahead and console log it, I'll just have all my elements inside all my elements in an array. So it's no other element is nested inside another. So I just have all my elements here. But I now also mentioned that there are cases where you're getting data from a database. You don't know the depth of the data you're getting. You don't know if it's nested 100 times and you can't specify. All you need to do is just specify infinity. Pass infinity. Once you pass infinity, what you're saying is that remove every nesting in this array and it's just flatten the whole array, irrespective of the number of nesting you have in the array. That's clear.
Okay, sir. Yes, sir.
Any more questions? Let me.
Yes, sir. I also don't know if you be chance if you can give us an assignment for the week.
Yeah, sure, that will be done. I just want us to get this first. Just get to play with this and understand them. So okay, I guess nobody has any question. Lucy, I hope you're following. I know you missed the class last week and no mistaken upper week. All right, so the videos will be available on time. We'll try to make it available on time then so that we can rewatch and see how these things work and apply them.
Thank you, sir.
Right. So we've come to the end of today's class, and